There was a smell that used to hang over a black neighborhood on a Monday evening that had nothing to do with what most people think of as Sunday dinner. It was greens, not Sunday's greens, Monday's greens. The pot that got started again because Big Mama never let a pot of greens die after just one meal. She stretched it. She fed a family off one bunch of collards and a ham bone for 3, sometimes 4 days. And nobody in that house ever once said, "We're having greens again." They just said, "Good." If you grew up watching a woman do that, turn almost nothing into a week of meals. You understand something a lot of folks your age are trying to relearn right now, sitting alone in a kitchen that used to hold 6 people and now holds 1. You understand that a pot of greens was never just supper. It was a system. It was economy. It was a woman managing a household with a skill that nobody wrote down because nobody thought they needed to. Today we're going back into that kitchen. 25 ways Big Mama made greens stretch, made them sing, made them carry a family through a week on pennies. And every single one of them still works if you're cooking for one today. Standing in a kitchen by yourself, trying to eat something that tastes like it was made with love instead of made in a hurry. Hey family, I'm James, and I want you to understand something before we start. This one is personal to me, because I know a lot of you watching are cooking for just yourselves these days. Kids grown, house quiet. And there's nothing wrong with that, but there's something about a pot of real greens that can make an empty kitchen feel a little less empty. So, today's not just memory. Today's a guide, if you want to use it that way. Now, before we get into it, if you're new here, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. We're building something here. A place where we remember how it was done right, and a place where you can learn to do it for yourself, even if it's just you at that table now. Go on, hit subscribe, ring the bell, and let's get into this. Number 1. The Sunday pot. The one that started it all. Every week began the same way in most of these houses. Sunday morning, before church, Big Mama would already have a big pot going low on the back burner. Collard greens, washed 3-4 times in the sink, because grit was the enemy and nobody trusted a bag of greens that hadn't been checked with her own 2 hands. She'd put in a smoked ham hock if she had one, a smoked turkey neck if money was tight that month. And she'd let that pot talk to itself for hours while the family was out the door. By the time everybody got home from service, the whole street smelled like Sunday. Now, here's the part folks forget. That Sunday pot wasn't made to be eaten once. It was made to be the foundation for the rest of the week. If you're cooking alone today, you can do the exact same thing. One big pot on a Sunday, portioned out into containers, gives you greens through Wednesday without you touching a stove again. That's not a modern meal prep trick. That's just what Big Mama was doing in 1962. Number 2. The potlikker, the part they threw away that was the whole point. Folks today buy greens and drain that liquid right down the sink, and Big Mama would have had something to say about that. That liquid, what she called potlikker, was where all the vitamins went when the greens cooked down. She'd save it in a jar in the icebox and use it through the week. A little bit poured over hot water, cornbread crumbled into a bowl was a whole meal on its own. And it cost nothing because it was already made. If you're stretching $1 today, don't you dare pour that liquid out. Save it. Drink it warm on a cold evening like she did. It's free food sitting right there in the pot. Number 3, Monday's greens, the reheat that tasted better than the first night. Everybody in the South will tell you the same thing. Greens taste better the second day. Big Mama knew this before anybody had a word for it. Monday, she'd take what was left from Sunday, add a splash of vinegar and a little more black pepper, let it simmer back up, and it tasted like a whole new dish. The flavors had a full day to sit and marry together. If you're eating alone and worried about eating the same thing again, change your mind about that. A reheated pot of greens with fresh vinegar splashed in is not leftovers. It's day 2 of a dish that was designed to get better with time. Number 4, mustard greens, the sharp cousin nobody talks about enough. Collards get all the credit, but mustard greens were their own kind of special, sharper. A little bit of a bite to them, almost peppery, and they cooked down faster than collards, which mattered on a weeknight when Big Mama didn't have 3 hours to stand at the stove. She'd cook them quick with just a little fatback and onion, and that sharpness would cut right through a plate of beans and rice. If you're looking for a greens recipe that doesn't take all day, mustard greens are your answer. 20-25 minutes and you've got something with real character on the plate. Number 5, turnip greens with the turnip still attached. Now, this one's for the folks who really remember. Big Mama wouldn't just buy the greens off a turnip, she'd buy the whole turnip, root and all. And she'd dice that root up small and throw it right in the pot with the greens. 2 vegetables, 1 price. The root got soft and sweet, almost like a potato, but with more character. And it stretched that pot of greens into something heartier. If your grocery budget is tight, look for turnip greens sold with the bulb still on. You're getting 2 meals worth of vegetable for the price most stores charge for just the leaves. Number 6, the single smoked neck bone. 1 piece of meat, a week of flavor. Meat was expensive, even back then, so Big Mama learned how to make 1 smoked neck bone do a week's worth of work. She'd simmer it in the pot. Sunday, pull most of the meat off Monday to eat separate, but she'd throw the bone right back in the pot for Tuesday and Wednesday's greens. That bone kept giving flavor long after the meat was gone. If you're on a fixed income and cooking for one, this is exactly how you make a $2 piece of smoked meat taste like you spent 20. Number 7, fat back and the art of rendering your own seasoning. Before folks were buying little bottles of liquid smoke and seasoning packets, Big Mama had a piece of fat back in the icebox that she used to season everything. She'd slice a piece off, let it render down slow in the bottom of the pot before the greens ever went in. And that little bit of rendered fat carried the whole dish. Nothing fancy, no brand name, just a woman who understood that flavor came from technique, not from a package. You can do this today with a small piece of salt pork from the meat counter, and it'll go further than you think. Number 8, poke sallet, the wild greens that grew for free. Now, I want to be careful here and tell it the way it was told to me, because this one is not for everybody, and it's not something you should try without knowing what you're doing. Pokeweed grew wild along fence rows and ditches all through the rural South, and Big Mama's generation knew how to pick the young, tender leaves in early spring and boil them not once, not twice, but 3 separate times in fresh water each time, because that plant carries something in it that has to be boiled clean out before it's safe. Done right, poke sallet scrambled up with eggs was a spring tradition in a lot of houses, and it cost nothing but the time it took to pick it and boil it right. That's a piece of history, family, more than it is something I want you going out and trying without somebody who really knows the process, teaching you hand to hand. Now, before we keep moving, I want to pause and ask you something, family. I want to hear from you in the comments. What's the one green, collard, mustard, turnip, whatever it was, that your grandmother made that you have never once been able to get to taste the same way? No matter how many times you've tried, tell me about it. Tell me what she did different. I read every single one of these comments, and I promise you, there's somebody else out there whose Big Mama made it the exact same way, and you two are about to remember something together. Number 9, the Wednesday prayer meeting pot, greens made to travel. A lot of these families were church people, and Wednesday night meant Bible study or prayer meeting, and more often than not, somebody was bringing a covered dish. Greens traveled well in a pot with a tight lid, and Big Mama would make a batch specifically thick and well-seasoned enough that it held up after sitting in the back of a car for 20 minutes. This wasn't Sunday's leftover pot. This was a fresh batch made with intention, because she knew other women were going to be tasting her cooking, and she took pride in that. There's a lesson in that, for cooking alone too. Sometimes you cook a little extra just so you've got something ready to bring to somebody, or something ready when somebody drops by. Keeping a pot on hand was never wasteful. It was hospitality waiting to happen. Number 10, the one-pot greens and rice supper. By midweek, money was often getting thin, and Big Mama had a trick for making a small amount of greens feed the whole table. She'd cook the greens down real good, then stir in cooked rice right at the end, letting it soak up all that potlikker. What started as a side dish became the whole meal, filling and satisfying, and it cost about as much as a bag of rice and whatever greens were left in the icebox. If you're eating alone and trying to make a little go a long way, this is one of the smartest things you can make. One bowl, filling, cheap. And it tastes like somebody took care to make it, because they did. Number 11, collards and cabbage together, a trick from the lean years. In the leanest stretches, Big Mama would cut her greens with cabbage, which cost less and bulked the pot up without changing the flavor too much. Half a head of collards and half a head of cabbage, cooked together in the same pot with the same seasoning, and you'd never have known the difference unless somebody told you. This wasn't a compromise to her, it was a skill, stretching what you had so nobody at the table went without. Number 12, black-eyed peas and greens, the pairing older than the Sunday plate. This combination goes back further than most folks realize, tracing all the way to West African foodways that survived the Middle Passage and took root in southern soil. Black-eyed peas simmered soft, and greens cooked down together made a plate that was cheap, filling, and, depending on who you asked, brought good luck if you ate it on New Year's Day. Big Mama didn't need the calendar to tell her when to make it, though. This combination showed up on the table any night. Money was tight because a bag of dried peas and a bunch of greens could feed a family for less than $1 in those days. Number 13, hot water cornbread, the side that made a poor meal feel whole. You cannot talk about a pot of greens without talking about what sat next to it. Hot water cornbread wasn't baked. It was fried, little patties of cornmeal mixed with boiling water and a pinch of salt, dropped into a hot skillet with just enough grease to crisp the outside. No eggs, no milk, no sugar, just cornmeal, water, salt, and heat. And it was ready in 10 minutes. When there wasn't much else in the house, hot water, cornbread, and a bowl of greens with potlikker was dinner, and nobody at that table felt like they'd gone without. We're a little over halfway through what I want to share with you today, family, and I need to stop and tell you something real quick because it matters to me that you hear it. These recipes I'm walking you through, they're a piece of what we almost lost, a whole way of eating well on almost nothing. A whole system of feeding a family with dignity, even when the money was thin. I put together something called the Soul Roots Cookbook, 100 forgotten Black American recipes, written out the way Big Mama would have done it, complete, patient, and true, with the measurements and the little secrets that never made it onto paper until now. The link is in the description below and pinned in the comments. You can also scan the code on your screen right now, if that's easier for you. Don't let these recipes disappear with the folks who carried them. Number 14, the vinegar splash, the finishing touch that changed everything. Big Mama kept a bottle of vinegar on the stove, not in the cabinet, because it went on the greens almost every single time before serving. A few dashes right at the table, sometimes from a jar with little hot peppers steeping in it that had been sitting on that counter for months. That vinegar cut through the richness of the fat back, brightened the whole dish, and turned a heavy pot of greens into something that woke your mouth up. If your greens ever taste flat, that's usually what's missing. Not more salt, not more meat. Just that splash of something sharp at the very end. Number 15, the Friday fish fry greens, a lighter batch for a different kind of night. Friday nights in a lot of these neighborhoods meant fish, whiting, catfish, whatever came cheap that week, fried up crispy in a cast iron skillet that had seen 40 years of service. Alongside it, Big Mama would make a lighter batch of greens, cooked quicker, and seasoned a little less heavy, because the fish was already rich and the greens needed to be a balance, not a competition. This was Big Mama reading the whole meal, not just one dish, understanding how flavors sat next to each other on a plate. Number 16, freezing greens before freezers were common in every house. Not every family had reliable refrigeration through the middle of the last century, and the ones who did understood something about batch cooking that we're only now calling meal prep. Big Mama, once a chest freezer became affordable, would cook a triple batch of greens on a weekend, let them cool, and portion them into containers to pull out through the month. This is one of the most practical things you can do today if you're cooking for one. Cook a big pot once, freeze it in single servings, and you've got homemade greens ready anytime without cooking every single night. Number 17, the church lady swap, trading dishes instead of recipes. Recipes weren't usually written down and handed over. Instead, women would trade dishes. You bring me a plate of your greens, I'll bring you a plate of my candied yams, and you'd taste what somebody else was doing differently and try to figure it out yourself the next time you cooked. This is how techniques spread through a whole community, without a single recipe card ever changing hands. If you've got a neighbor cooking alone too, that's a tradition worth bringing back. Trade a plate. You'll both eat better, and you won't be eating alone either. Number 18, turnip greens with a little sugar, the sweetness folks forgot about. Some households, especially deeper into the Carolinas, would add just a small spoon of sugar to a pot of turnip greens, cutting the bitterness of the green without anybody being able to tell exactly what made it taste so balanced. It wasn't much, barely a teaspoon in a whole pot, but it was the kind of small detail that separated a good pot of greens from a great one. And it's the kind of thing that never made it into any restaurant version of this dish. Number 19, the single-serving skillet method. Greens made fast for one. Now, here's one specifically for cooking alone, because Big Mama had a version of this too, back when it was just her and Granddaddy in the house after the children grew and moved on. A handful of greens, torn small, cooked fast in a skillet with a little bacon grease and a splash of water to steam them down in 15 minutes flat. Not the all-day Sunday pot, a weeknight version built for 1 or 2 people, built for a woman who still wanted real food, but didn't need to cook for a table of 8 anymore. If that's you right now, this is your method. Number 20, dandelion greens, the bitter green picked from the yard. Before folks were buying dandelion greens in a plastic bag at the store for $4, they were pulling them right out of the yard for free, young and tender in early spring. Cooked down the same way as any other green, a little fat, a little liquid, patience. They carried a bitterness that some folks loved and some folks had to grow into loving, the way you grow into loving black coffee. It was a green that reminded a family that food didn't always come from a store. Sometimes it came from paying attention to what was already growing around you. We are getting close to the end of what I want to share with you today, and I need you to sit with me for just a second, family, because you've been here with me through most of this. And that tells me something about you. It tells me you understand that what we've been talking about is not just food. It's a record of how people fed each other with almost nothing and still made it taste like love. I know some of you are thinking, I'll ask my mama for that recipe one of these days. I'll write it down eventually. Family, I've been doing this long enough to know that one of these days sometimes never comes. That's exactly why I put together the Soul Roots Cookbook. 100 recipes, written out complete, the way Big Mama made them, every tip and every secret included. You can keep relying on memory alone, hoping it holds, or you can have it all in one place, preserved the right way starting today. The link's in the description and pinned right up top in the comments. Scan the code on your screen if that's easier. I did my part putting this together for you. The rest is yours. Number 21, the Saturday market greens, buying what was cheapest that week. Saturday mornings, a lot of these families were at the market or the produce stand, and Big Mama didn't go in with a fixed recipe in mind. She went in and asked what was cheapest, what was freshest, and she built the week's greens around whatever that answer was. Some weeks it was collards. Some weeks it was a mix of 3 different greens because each one was a little wilted, and the man at the stand gave her a deal on all 3 together. This is a lesson in itself. She never let a recipe dictate her budget. She let her budget and what was fresh dictate the recipe, and that flexibility is exactly how you eat well on very little today. Number 22, the neck bone and rice broth, when meat ran out before the week did. Sometimes by Thursday the meat was gone, but the flavor it left behind wasn't. Big Mama would take that nearly bare bone, simmer it down into a thin broth, and pour it over rice with whatever last spoonful of greens remained in the pot. It wasn't a full pot of greens anymore. It was the memory of one, stretched into something that still filled a stomach and still tasted like care. There is a particular kind of skill in knowing how to feed somebody with almost nothing left. And that skill lived in women like her, who never once let their families feel the emptiness of the icebox. Number 23, the greens she made after the funeral. I want to tell you about a specific kind of pot of greens because I think it matters. When somebody in the community passed, women didn't ask what they could bring. They just showed up with a dish already made, and greens were almost always one of them, sitting there next to the ham and the mac and cheese and the sweet potato pie on a table set up in somebody's front room. That pot of greens, in that moment, wasn't about hunger. It was about presence. It said, without a single word being spoken, I am here, and I am going to make sure you eat, even on the day you can barely stand up. If you've lost somebody, and you're eating alone now for reasons you didn't choose, I want you to know that pot of greens tradition exists for exactly this. Somebody should still be bringing you one, and if nobody is, you deserve to make yourself one anyway, and to know that making it for yourself is its own act of care, not a lesser one. Number 24. The recipe she never wrote down, because she never thought it needed writing. Every family had one dish that existed only in a woman's hands, never on paper, because she assumed everybody already knew it, or she assumed she'd have time to show her daughter someday, standing right there in the kitchen with her. A pinch of this, a little more of that. Cook it until it looks right. And then one day, she was gone, and the dish was gone with her. And grown children stood in kitchens all across this country, trying to reconstruct a taste from memory alone, getting close, but never quite there. If there is a woman in your family still living who cooks a pot of greens nobody has ever measured out, go stand in that kitchen with her. Watch her hands. Ask her the questions now, because this is exactly how something so ordinary, so daily, so taken for granted, becomes the very thing you'd give anything to have back. Number 25, the last pot, Sunday, one more time, for a table of one. I want to close this list with something I think about often. Picture Big Mama later in life, after the house had emptied out, after the children were grown and scattered and Granddaddy had passed on, standing in that same kitchen, still washing a bunch of collards 3 times in the sink out of habit, still letting that pot talk to itself low on the back burner all Sunday morning. Even though there was nobody left to smell it but her, she still made the potlikker. She still splashed the vinegar at the table. She still set a place, even if it was just the one, because the recipe was never really about feeding a crowd. It was about a woman who knew how to take care of herself and the people she loved with dignity, on whatever was in front of her, whether that was a full table or an empty one. If you're standing in your kitchen alone tonight, making a pot of greens just for you, understand something. You are not doing a lesser version of what she did. You are doing exactly what she did. You are carrying it forward. Now, before we close out, family, if any of this brought something back for you today, go ahead and hit that like button for me. Subscribe if you haven't already, so you're here with us every single time we do this. And I want to hear from you. Out of these 25, which one are you making this week? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and I promise you, somebody else watching is going to see your comment and remember something they hadn't thought about in years. I want you to share this one, family. Share it with the person in your family who's eating alone right now and could use a reminder that a real meal isn't measured by how many people are at the table. Share it with the son or daughter who never learned to make a proper pot of greens and thinks it's harder than it is. This might be exactly the nudge they need. Subscribe, because next time we're going somewhere just as real as today. 25 ways, family, and every single one of them comes back to the same truth. A pot of greens was never just something to eat. It was a woman's whole philosophy of taking care of people, boiled down into a Sunday afternoon and stretched patiently, generously, all the way through a hard week. And it still works exactly the same way today, whether you're feeding a house full of grandchildren or just yourself, standing quiet in a kitchen that still knows how to smell like Sunday. That's not something we lost. That's something waiting for you to pick back up any evening you decide to. I'll see you next time, family.